Welcome to another Executive Espresso Break. My name is Sam Palazzolo. This is the caffeinated edge for scaling success. Today, I'm joined by Abigail Ireland. In a minute, I'll give her an opportunity to introduce herself. She's an expert in peak performance, productivity, and leadership development. So grab your espresso and get ready as we dive into today's conversation on peak performance for business leaders. Here's where we're going today with an agenda. We're going to begin talking a little bit about the foundations of peak performance. We're going to slide into optimizing mind and body for success. We'll then take a glimpse into high impact productivity strategies. And then we'll bring it home by talking about how we can sustain long-term performance. For those joining us for the first time, again, my name is Sam Palazzolo. I'm managing director at Tip of the Spear Ventures, where we help leaders scale their businesses through executive coaching, business strategy, and mergers and acquisition. And again, I'm joined today by Abigail Ireland, a peak performance strategist with deep expertise in optimizing leadership effectiveness. Abby, before we dive in, tell us a bit about your background and what led you to focus on peak performance.
Yeah, good to be here today, Sam, as well. And I'm looking forward to our conversation. A bit about my background. I started in banking many years ago now and was in lots of teams that were very high performing. I worked in deal teams, private equity, acquisition finance. And over the years, I got more and more into things like nutrition, fitness, really thinking about the aspects that can impact us and help us to perform better. Because I realized a lot of the time when I was working in banking, we're doing, for example, very long hours, eating not very good food, not taking breaks, and expected to still deliver results at this high level. So it was a slow iterative process, but it's come together naturally over the years. All of the things that I learned and I picked up and my experiences have kind of built into the work I do today.
That's great. I'm ready to get into it. And I know our crowd is as well. Before we dig in though, let me make you a special offer, audience who's tuned in. It's a quick moment to invite those of you looking to gain deeper insight into your 2025 business growth opportunities. I'm going to invite you to book a session with me. We'll do a 20-minute executive briefing. It's a strategy session where we'll look to identify your most pressing business challenge, explore some 2025 scaling programs that I have, and uncover the true costs associated with your next big move. I'll put the information in the bio as well as the link to this video, as well as my Calendly link. So let's drive forward here, Abby. Let's start off with the foundations of peak performance. What truly drives peak performance? I wanted to find out from your perspective in your work, what do you see as the key pillars of peak performance, and how can leaders integrate them into their daily routines?
That's the most important question, right? So in my work, I have 5 pillars, but 3 of the key ones, which are your physiology, your productivity, and psychology. So mind, body, and how do you go about your day in terms of the ways of working, meeting, effectiveness, communicating with other people, all of those things that impact the effectiveness of how you spend your time, essentially. And I believe that you can't have one without the other. They're all very much integrated. And most of the time people think, I'll just focus on time management, or I'll focus on technical skills to be the best I can be. And they forget that it has to be sustainable. So with the kind of physiology, psychology, productivity pillars, I try to encourage leaders to incorporate all of them to be at their best, to bring their A game every single day. And when it comes to integrating into daily routines, most important thing is that it has to be simple. It has to be easy enough that they can actually do it, as opposed to it being something extra to their days and to everything else they've got going on. Because we know that executives are very busy people. So it's not going to be necessarily that easy if it's too much of an ask to do these things.
Yeah, I know. I worked with an executive coach who was insistent that I wake up at 5 a.m.
Yes.
In the morning. I'm a chronic insomniac. So I was probably just going to bed at 5 in the morning. So it didn't really work out for me. But you hit on a little bit. The second question that we have here deals with sustaining. So I'm curious from your perspective, when it comes to that mindset, psychology plays a huge role. How do leaders need to shift their thinking to sustain peak performance over time?
So the most important thing I would say is it's not about push things being as striving as much as possible to get this top result every single day. It's about recognizing when you need to push, when you need to relax a little bit, when you need to go faster, slow down. And a lot of people confuse peak performance with I'm on full power the whole time. And I liken it to, I don't know, a hairdryer or a vacuum cleaner, for example. You don't put it on the full setting all the time that it's on, otherwise it's going to burn out. And the same happens with us as human beings, as leaders. We need to pick and choose the battles and think about when we need to really push hard and when we need to take a step back, take it a notch down. And I guess in terms of mindset shift, that's the biggest thing. It's people's attitude towards what is peak performance, and also recognizing peak performance isn't, again, just technical skills and pushing hard every day. It's about balancing these items or these three pillars, but not 33%, 33, 33. It's figuring out which ones you need on different days. That's the most important thing.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense to me. The guy who spent almost 2 decades in the auto industry, I think peak performance, everyone considers running at red line, high revving engine, but at high revving engine and at speed, vehicles break down, and so do leaders, right?
Yeah.
So it's probably one of those opportunities to get some reality and just recognize that you're not going to operate at peak performance 100% of the time. It
Mm.
probably brings us nicely into the next conversation topic, which is optimizing mind and body for success. We know that high performing leaders aren't just mentally sharp, they need to prioritize their physical well being too. Abby, how do sleep, nutrition, and movement impact leadership effectiveness?
Yeah, they're great questions, Sam. And just on what you said about peak performance being something we can't do all the time. Again, I guess an approach that I take to peak performance involves taking the breaks, slowing down and everything. Like you can be operating at your peak on holiday in Hawaii on the beach somewhere because you need that rest to recharge. So when it comes to sleep and when it comes to what you eat, exercise, moving around, all of these things, again, as human beings, we need to incorporate, especially now more than ever. Because I think in the past, people thought we can just be like robots, more input, more output, right?
Yep.
And I think now we're seeing the rise of AI, for example, and we cannot compete against the efficiency and the speed at which, for example, artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, OpenAI can just do things. And so we need to think, what are the human factors that are going to help us to optimize ourselves as humans and therefore be the best leaders we can be? Because if we're not sleeping well, we might be grumpy the next morning, we might snap at people, we're not thinking clearly, we don't make good decisions. Same with nutrition. Our sleep affects our nutrition. We eat badly if we haven't slept, and then we don't sleep because we've eaten badly. And if we don't move, if we're just sitting at a desk sedentary all day, we're at risk of all sorts of things that are going to ultimately impact how well we can focus on the job at hand. I had an example when I worked in banking. I think with the ergonomics even of the desk, if you're sitting at a desk for 12, 14 hours a day, you get aches and pains. You then have to take time out to go to the physio or to look after yourself. And if you just focus on those elements in the first place, you can continue on a sustainable basis, which is what I always say.
Yeah, let's focus on it further because you're leading up to the next question here, which is what are some simple physiological habits leaders can implement today to increase focus and resistance?
Yeah. So with focus, we can definitely think about what we're eating. When I go to clients sometimes, and you'll probably see it as well, Sam, when you're meeting with clients, what do you get when you go to a meeting room? You'll get some biscuits and some maybe coffee and tea and maybe sandwiches. And you're running a training session or you're in a training session and you expect people to keep going in the afternoon and absorb everything that you are sharing with them, but they're falling asleep because they've had this really white processed carb heavy meal, for example. So simple things we can do: get enough water, make sure that we are hydrated as much as possible because our brains have so much water. The percentage of water in our brain cells need hydration. Making sure that we've got glucose that is feeding into our brains, but obviously from good sources. not the sugary candy bars, chocolate bars, and things that we typically tend to have, and thinking about getting enough sleep and not underestimating that. So when you talked about people saying we can be more productive, and that means getting up an hour earlier, not always the case for everyone. Sometimes the sleep is more important than the exercise or the food. We need the sleep so our brains can go through that whole cycle of working out what's in there, resting, repairing, restoring, the physical, the emotional repair. So these are basics. And the problem is, because they're basic, people forget them or people overlook them. They think, oh, I know how to breathe. I know how to eat. I know how to sleep. But it's the quality that makes the difference, which we need to fine tune a little bit.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. In tech, we have this garbage in, garbage out mentality. And I think it's to be avoided, obviously. And likewise, when it comes to the physiology of the leader looking to achieve peak performance, if you're putting garbage into your vehicle, your
Yeah.
body, you're probably going to get garbage out. I think you hit on a key point also, which is the rest moment. I think that's so much of how you reboot your system occurs at restful state. It's a key focus area that leaders often overlook. So, now great points. Let's slide into our next topic here, which is high impact productivity strategies. From my experience, and I'm wondering what yours are, leaders constantly juggle priorities. They manage energy ineffectively sometimes. The more effective they can, it can be a real game changer for them. Abby, my question here is, how can leaders better manage their energy and attention throughout the workday?
Yeah, we've definitely got into a mode as the years have gone where our attention spans have got smaller and smaller. So I think nowadays it's probably only a few minutes, if that, even a few seconds perhaps, before we start switching to something else, or we start doing something and then we forget what we were doing and an email pops up and we're jumping all over the place. For me, what I learned over the years and how I work in my business, and you probably do the same in yours, is be very intentional about how you spend your time. And leaders have the ability to do this more than anyone else. I would say the more junior you are in an organization, the less control you have over your time because someone else is putting in meetings and everything else for you. But leaders can manage their energy, manage their attention more effectively by focusing on one particular task at a time. Doesn't sound it sounds very simple, but I know most people don't do this. The multitasking comes in, you're having a meeting with someone on a one-to-one and you get distracted with your phone. So even just training yourself to think, when I'm having a conversation with someone, put the phone away, focus with that person, learn to get uncomfortable or learn to be uncomfortable being with just in one place, doing one thing. And the more we do that, the more we're going to get used to this single attention or single tasking as opposed to multitasking. And then things like the Pomodoro technique, managing your time and energy by working in sprints and then taking a break so your brain can recover, and then going back to a sprint and taking a break again means your brain capacity or your ability for your brain to perform at a high level stays up, as opposed to just dropping off during the day, which we tend to see when we're just non-stop without having any breaks or rest or time out.
Yeah. No, the Pomodoro technique is a great
Yeah.
methodology to be able to build into your system some well-deserved downtime. One of the things that I've been walking leaders through in our CEO Catalyst program is Cal Newport's time blocking methodology, where strategically looking at your day, where are the windows that you can call time out to refresh, recharge?
Yes.
And typically, we have this methodology that goes something like, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. It's akin to, if it's not written down, it's not a goal. But we do it electronically and we do it within a calendar, specifically from a strategic orientation to time. How is it that we can maximize our time, but also how can we also build in those well-deserved breaks that we need? And it doesn't mean that you need to go out for a walk in the park and take your shoes off and ground with Mother Earth. It really is about, hey, look, I'm going to take a 10-minute break here and I'm going to walk over and I'm going to grab a cup of coffee. I probably won't load it up with sugar and cream, which is my nature based off of what you just shared with us. But it is one of those things of, you got to manage your time strategically. Leads
Yeah.
us nicely into our second question here for high impact productivity strategies, Abby. And that is, When it comes to decision making, what are those strategies that can help leaders reduce decision fatigue and improve their cognitive clarity?
Yeah. So with decision fatigue, we make thousands of decisions every single day. And each decision, and even if it's what clothes should I wear today, or what am I going to eat for breakfast? How am I going to get the ingredients? All these little things that we do experience every single day will eat away at our brain's cognitive energy reserves, I would say. And so we need to think, how do I make more things happen on autopilot? What do I do to have just certain habits, positive habits, that are going to just be things that are there, routines, for example, which actually free up time for me to do what I need to do, the important stuff. And often, again, people think, oh, I don't want all these structured routines. I don't want to time block my day because it's too restrictive. But the reality is you actually get more freedom when you do it. I totally agree with you, Sam. I put in everything into my calendar. Even going to the gym, I know I put the time in, and if I don't do it, I move it. But at least I know it's something I need to do in that day. And because I've got it in my calendar, because it's just front of mind and I see it every single day when I open up my calendar, these certain things, it automatically is just unconsciously something that I do. So I would say one of the easiest things that leaders can do is just think, what is one small behavioral change I can make? What's one small thing that I can start to do to reduce the number of decisions I have to make every day? A silly one that I have now is I literally have 3 kind of loungewears that I have at home. So I just know if I'm at home, I just wear that outfit or that outfit, and it's just easy. And it's quite nice not having to think about those things.
Yeah, it's almost akin back to the Steve Jobs days where he
Yeah.
wore the black mock turtleneck.
And
That's
that's why he did it.
yeah, from it clears up some headspace. You talked a little bit earlier about the multitasking. I think I wrote an article that was titled "The Multitasking Myth," and within it, I described the concept of people that think that they're great at multitasking. In a productivity study conducted, I think by MIT, they found that they're actually less productive. So if you think you're a good multitasker, bad news, you're not. Also, I think some of the more brilliant leaders that I've worked with, I would throw them in the category where they were on the scale from an ADD, ADHD perspective. And I'm not saying it's always a bad thing. It can be used and harnessed for good, but it doesn't mean that those multitasking moments occur simultaneously. I would look at it more from a shifting gears, right? Being able to go from first gear to second gear to third gear, back to first gear, so on and so forth throughout their day. I think
Mm.
those are the types of things that can be really helpful for leaders. And I'll give you an even better one, and it's a simple one all of us can utilize as we leave the meeting. The phone is the biggest killer of productivity and disruptor of focus. So we implemented 2 things during our meetings. One, everybody's got to put their phone on silent. And second, everybody's got to put their phone face down because these are the disruptions that otherwise come into the mix. So, anyway, a couple helpful tips. Hopefully that helps. Let's slide into our last topic here, which is sustaining long term performance. I have seen that many leaders struggle with burnout, often without realizing it until it's just too late. Abby, I wanted to find out from your perspective, what are common mistakes leaders make that lead to this burnout, and how can they potentially avoid them?
Yeah. The biggest mistake is complacency, thinking, oh, it happens to other people, it won't happen to me. And these little indicators and clues that our body tells us that we're not in a good place, or the way we interact with other people, where we come home at the end of the day and we maybe snap at our loved ones, or we find it hard to concentrate or to go to sleep, and we find ourselves craving. For example, I do this. I crave sugar when I'm really stressed, and I therefore eat a lot of sugar. So all of those things, it's not the act, but it's the symptoms and the signs saying to us, you need to do something about it. And because we're in this busy world and there's so much stuff going on and we're just going, a lot of leaders think, I'm at the top. I've done well by doing the things I've already done. I don't need to think about these other factors like my physiology or my mindset or something else. I've done well because I've just got to the top doing the things that I do. The thing is, with things like burnout, I guess it happens, there's a tipping point and there's a kind of straw that breaks the camel's back. And we want to, again, recognize those cues and clues to stop us getting from that point before it's too late?
Yeah, I put this in a I haven't necessarily seen the tipping point where all of a sudden they recognize it. I think it's more if you've ever seen one of those pits that forms from a water washout, where all of a sudden where there was a road, now all of a sudden the road has collapsed because
Yes.
underneath it, all the soil and the foundation got washed out. Typically, I find leaders moving right along. And then it's a hard left turn into, I didn't see that coming.
No, you're absolutely. That's a great example. It's the stuff happening underneath the surface that we either ignore or we don't even know we need to look out for it, which is the
Yeah.
problem.
Yeah. Maybe if they time blocked in some time just to have some chocolate, I think that might be.
Possibly, yeah, yeah. Or even just doing time blocking time to do an assessment on a scale of 1 to 10. How is my sleep or how is my nutrition? All these kind of things could be quite interesting as a week to week indicator.
Let's slide into the last question here. And beyond personal performance, how can leaders build a culture of peak performance within their teams and their organizations for long term success?
Yeah, so for me, the most important thing about peak performance is also recognizing in a team environment, it's not just about having the one star player, one person's this top performer and everyone else is ignored, nor is it about having necessarily a whole group of people who are all peak top performers and they don't gel as a team. So in order to drive this culture where people are trying to strive towards or trying to achieve peak performance, it's about every individual holding themselves accountable, taking pride in their work, and actually coming to work every day thinking, I want to do the best I can do today. I think what happens in a lot of teams is that you have people who have that attitude, then you've also got people maybe who maybe sit back a little bit, or people who think, I'm not being recognized, or I don't feel I have the skills to do what I need to do. So if a leader really wants to build this peak performance culture, they need to notice each person, understand where each person's at, help them to build the skills, close the gaps, but also make sure that every person is recognized for the skills and the qualities that they bring to the table. And looking at mindset first, but going back to what we started on, mindset of the attitude of those individuals is the main driver, I would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I've always been a big believer in if you show me the compensation plan, I will show you or tell you what behaviors are going to be indicative of your associates. I think this is that plus the actual accountability. You said the A word. I know that in a sales capacity, most of the sales leaders that I work with, their challenge is how do I have a good one to one meeting? And a one to one meeting isn't just reviewing statistics. And I'm an accountant by training, so I would love to talk numbers. It's also trying to dig deep into the what are the challenges that you're facing? If you're above quota, how do we keep you above? If you're below, what's keeping you from achieving? And you hit on a key point, which is meeting the individual where it is that they're at. Because I think if you're looking to build a real cohesive team, there's a lot that the leader can do to help pull up performance levels. But I think the often overlooked thing is the teammates, the other stakeholders. Having everyone work as a team doesn't only mean that the leader has the conversation with the teammate, it means the other team members have conversations with the teammate. Some might be the, what are you doing that's working so well? Please share with us. Some of them might be, pick up the slack. You are the weakest link here, right? So, all interesting, really good stuff here. Let me bring this home here. Again, I offer these executive espresso strategy sessions. It's an opportunity for you to meet with me in 20 minutes. We will identify what a key challenge is for you. I'll share some case studies of how it is and who it is that I have seen overcome similar, and then we'll build out an action plan for you. Most of the leaders that work with me then transition nicely into a coaching or consultation engagement. So, a wonderful way to begin our work together. Abby, let's bring this all the way home here and see if I can't do some closing remarks here. We've explored the essential aspects of peak performance from building strong psychological and physiological foundations to adopting high impact productivity strategies and sustaining long term success. So, Abby, before we close, What's one action step leaders should implement today to elevate their performance?
Yeah, I think the number one thing you can do is not make it too hard. So think of one small change you can make to one of the things that we talked about, your mindset in terms of how you approach things, perhaps your growth mindset. It could be your sleep routine. You just think, I'm going to not look at my phone before bed. So very simple thing. Or even just thinking at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm going to have an apple, not a chocolate bar. So I think one small, easy thing that you can stack onto what you do anyway is the simplest way forward. Once you've done that, you can do another thing and another thing, but it all edges us forward towards peak performance.
Yeah, it really is one holistic picture, right? This is
Absolutely.
fantastic. For those who want to dive deeper with you, how do they get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can contact me at abby@understandingperformance.com, or my website is understandingperformance.com, and LinkedIn as well. I'm on LinkedIn, so I do spend a lot of time on there as well.
Great. You're great. Abigail, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. Again, for those listening in, I want to invite you to explore our 2025, either our Executive Espresso strategy session, our scaling programs, our catalyst programs, where we help leaders implement these types of principles we discussed here in business for measurable success. Thanks for joining this Executive Espresso break. Until next time, stay sharp, stay focused, and keep drinking espresso.